Welcome friends to Farm Fresh Designs 59. I hope you liked the video today, and if you do, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And make sure to hit the notifications button so YouTube will notify you when I add my next video. My first project today is a small cutting board. Now I have already painted it with Rust-Oleum linen white chalk paint, and I did a heavy dry brushing on the front and on the back and on the sides because I don't want to go back later and sand it down on the edges to distress it. Now the mold that I'm using is made by Redesign with Prima, but I don't know what the name of it is. It has 4 different vegetables on it. One is a carrot, one is a mushroom, and I think one of them is a beet, like the little red beets, and the other one, well, I don't have a clue what it is. And what I really like about this mold is there is so much detail on the vegetables. And not only does it have the vegetable, but it has the little roots, and it also has the greenery that comes up out of the ground. And I like that. But with Redesign with Prima, they don't have that extra little lip around the edges. So what I've mentioned before is to already know what it's going to look like before you put that air dry clay in it so that you can push that clay right up to the edges. Now because it's got some real tiny little pieces on it, I went on and put it in the freezer, which does not hurt the clay at all. But it helps it to kind of come out easier, and it keeps those little teeny pieces from breaking. And you can tell that it's already started setting up because it looks like it's dry around the edges. And I'm just trying to be really careful, even with it having been put in the freezer for a while, because I want to try to save those little pieces on the roots that as much as I can. But I realize that, yeah, they might kind of break off a little bit, so I'm trying to be really careful with it. Now, I can't put all 4 vegetables on it, but that's okay. So now what I'm using is Tight Bond glue to adhere those molds to the cutting board. Now I like to go ahead and squirt some out on a piece of parchment paper instead of putting it right onto the mold. And I use these little silicone sticks that I get at Hobby Lobby. And some people use popsicle sticks, and some people just rub it on with their finger. But I'm not one of those people that like glue on their fingers, and especially because the Tight Bond glue is so thick. And if you let it stay on there too long, then it's pretty hard to get off. So I'm doing pretty good with the carrot, even on the little skinny roots. But there toward the end, it gets kind of treacherous, and the very edge of the carrot just doesn't make it. But that's okay. And I like to spread it out all the way to the edge as much as I can, because later on when I put it on the cutting board, then I'm just going to lightly press around the edges. Now because the carrot is the largest one, I wanted to put that one on first. And because this cutting board is a smaller one and it's more of a decorative cutting board, I am not able to fit the entire carrot on it. If I was using a regular size cutting board, I think I would actually be able to put all 4 on it. Now, also, if I was using resin, then it wouldn't matter if the leaves for the carrot kind of hung over on the side. But because it's air dry clay, I don't think it would make it, because I think it would be too easy for those pieces to break off. And so I'm just trying to be really careful with those little roots, because I think that's what adds so much to it. And even the little ridges that you normally would see on a carrot, it shows up on these molds. But it has so much detail to it. I believe it's one of the prettier vegetable molds that I've seen. And so I'm just trying to figure out what's going to be the best setting for me to get them all on there. So what do you think? Is this something that you would make? And also, if it's not something you would make, but you have a friend that has a vegetable garden, or somebody that sets up at the farmer's market, this would be a really neat gift for them. But I'm just going to, after I've got them all situated, then I go on and glue the other two pieces down. Now, because some of the pieces are pretty small and because there's so much detail, I go ahead and let the clay set up overnight because I don't want to paint or put any products on it with it still wet because there's so much detail that I don't want to push it on. And I go ahead and paint all three pieces of the vegetables. I go ahead and paint that with the Rust-Oleum linen white chalk paint as well. Now what I'm using is Dixie Belle Voodoo Gel Stain, and it's called Tobacco Road. And I like to kind of squirt some out on a little parchment paper and then brush it on. And I'm using a pretty good amount on it because remember it's already dry, so I don't really worry about breaking it. And I'm going to go and wipe back a lot of it, but I want to make sure that it gets in all the little crevices and especially on the sides. So I'll put on the Voodoo Gel Stain. I'll put it on pretty heavy and then I'll wipe it back off. And then once I get it all done, then if some of it kind of misses and it didn't have as much gel stain on it as I want, then I just go back and put some more on it. And the gel stain, it's really easy to put on, and it's also really easy to take off. Now, in the past, sometimes I've sprayed it with a clear sealer before I put the Voodoo Gel Stain on it, but I did not this time because I knew that I did want it darker in some places. So I'm just putting it on the fresh painted pieces. Well, they've actually dried, but I didn't seal it before I put the Voodoo Gel Stain on it. So what sort of vegetables do you like in the summertime? My husband loves tomatoes, and I believe last year when he had his garden, or maybe it was the summer before last, he only planted 50 tomato plants. But he had it over at his parents' house, and all of his family likes tomatoes a lot. So he likes to share his vegetables with just about everybody. And he's always afraid that, some of the plants aren't going to make it, so he likes to plant extra. But we don't let them go to waste at all. And there's the finished product. Now my next project is just a simple rolling pin that I thrifted. And I'm painting the main part of it with Rust-Oleum linen white chalk paint. And I actually paint the edges of that main part as well. And it was kind of hard because my hopes was that little handle wouldn't plop back down on it, but it turned out fine in the end. And I actually stuck it in a jar and kind of leaned it up against something so it would dry well. And then I painted the handles black, and then I put like a little black buffalo check ribbon on just one edge of it. Now then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a stamp on it. And it's a stamp from the IOD Antiquities stamp set. And this one is just like a little pig. And I don't know why I specifically used that one. Maybe it's because recently my mom was talking about making ham biscuits for a friend of hers. And I saw that pig and I just started thinking about, the country ham that my mom likes to cook. Now, this is the first time that I've ever stamped something that's rounded, so I was a little bit nervous. Oh, and also on the rolling pin, I put a little bit of Voodoo Gel Stain on it to kind of antique it. So I'm using the IOD black ink to stamp it up with, and I don't try to put it on a thin mount at all. I'm just going to go ahead and try to put it on just straight on it. And that's what was kind of making me a little nervous. And I was also wanted to make sure that any extra ink that was around the edges, I got it wiped off with a baby wipe. And I've actually got my rolling pin I've got a paint can on one side and I've got another thing of paint on the other side trying to hold it still. And so I'm really nervous about how it's going to turn out. So I'm trying to just be really careful and not let it move. And I kind of hold it down in the middle with my thumbs, and I'm using my fingers to press it down up at the top and at the bottom. And I'm not real sure how it's going to turn out. Now, when I pull it up, yes, there is a little part that didn't ink up, but that was fine. It didn't matter. So what do you think? Now, my next piece is actually just a really large hang tag. So when my in-laws passed away, one of the things that we got is those really large strainers that you use when you're gonna like can tomatoes, or you want to can tomato juice. And I've never done it before, but my mother-in-law, she did a lot of canning in the summertime. And so I have it, and I'm not ready to use it yet, but I thought it would be really pretty when it just sets out to just have a hang tag on it. So this is actually just a larger, thin piece of wood. It's something that I bought, I think, on Amazon, because I used this wood last year for some Christmas ornaments. And so I just painted it white, and all I'm doing now is just layering different pieces on it. Some of the things that I'm layering on it is some writing, and I believe, I think it's just an old book that I got, and the pages were already yellow. I didn't coffee stain these. Another thing that I'm putting on it is some doilies that I did coffee stain, and I tear them just a little bit, and I have not only the little frilly parts on the edge, but the other part. And then another thing I'm using is just a little like red outline of a flower that I found in a little magazine. And then up in the right hand corner, yeah, it's a flower, and I know I'm going to be hanging it on a tomato strainer, but I like that the red kind of goes along when I think about tomatoes. And then I had a piece of ephemera that talked about tomatoes on it, so I'm actually gluing that right in the middle. Now, one of the things that I did was I used the Tim Holtz Distressing Ink to go around that, and I put that right in the middle. And I'm actually just using a glue stick to put it on, because later on, after I get it all finished, I spray it with a sealer just to make sure that it has adhered well. And you'll notice that that piece of wood was more of a rectangle, but what I do later on is I just use a sandpaper, and I kind of sand the edges, and it gets all of that extra stuff that's hanging off. And this is just some little stickers that I ordered, and I believe I ordered them, I think they came from the AliExpress. I've had them for a pretty good while. And it's just something that's also red. And if you watch Lisa with Our Shabby Cottage, she is amazing when it comes to making hang tags. So she's always my inspiration when I make these. And this is just a little finger sander so that I can pull off that extra pieces. But I like that little layered effect. And then later on, I use my heavy hole puncher to punch a hole in it, and then I use some seam binding ribbon to hang it with, and I use 2 different colors. So is this something that you would use? Do you have any like vegetable things, or like kind of antiques, or things that maybe you've gotten from somebody that mean a lot to you that you want to just have sitting out? And maybe it's not something that you use all the time, but it just brings back some really sweet memories. Because I remember going over to my mother-in-law's house in the summertime, and oh my goodness, there would be tomatoes all over the counter. And everybody in my husband's family liked tomatoes, so they always had to have plenty of tomatoes. And so I'm just going around the edges and getting it all sanded off. And then on the back of it, I believe I go and I just use some more book pages on the back. So what do you think? What's been your favorite project today? Did you like the cutting board? or the rolling pin or this hang tag. And tell me something, what's your favorite vegetable in the summertime? Now, one of the things that I like to do after I get it all glued on is to just use a script stamp and just kind of stamp here and there. Now, this is my IOD black ink, and I know that I like the stone gray, but I knew that I wanted it to show up, so I'm using the black this time. And I just kind of put it here and there. And this is just a little script stamp that I found on Amazon. And you can find just different ones. And it's just smaller writing. I know that the IOD Kindest Regards stamp is something that a lot of people use, but the words on it are larger than what I would want on the hang tag. And there's my 2 different colors of seam binding that I use to hang it with. So friends, I hope you've enjoyed the video today. Make sure to let me know which one was your favorite. And there's that tomato strainer. And that's that greenery that I get at Hobby Lobby that I like so much. And there's my little hang tag. I think my mother-in-law would be pretty proud of it. And then I've got just like a little ironstone teapot and coffee and creamer. And here's my little cutting board. And I just put a little bit of black ribbon on it to, like if I was going to hang it up. And then I've got my rolling pin. Now, also, when I pull up the camera, look at that little book that's got the black gingham ribbon on it. I actually like to get those little white Bibles. They're like little New Testaments. And I put about 2 or 3 together and tie them into like a little book stack. And then that floral that's on it comes from the wedding section at Hobby Lobby. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. Guys, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. But I hope you have a good rest of the week. And thank you so much for watching and all your support. Have a great day.